Good afternoon, everyone. This is Janice Mathis. I'm Executive Director at the National Council of Negro Women. Welcome to our Millennial Entrepreneur Series of webinars to help you achieve your entrepreneurial goals. We'll be ready to get started in just a moment. Give people a chance to join. People are still signing in, and we want as many of you to join as possible. NCNW presents this webinar every fourth Friday because we know there are a lot of younger and not so young women who see themselves as entrepreneurs and business owners. This topic is so exciting to me because I can remember the one thing I did not learn in law school was how to keep my clients happy. So I'm very interested in hearing what our presenter has to say today, and I know it'll be useful to you too. To moderate our discussion today, we have the distinguished Dr. Jennifer Collins. She is the Assistant Dean of Accreditation and Assessment, as well as an Associate Professor of Management in the School of Business and Industry at the famous Florida A&M University. Most recently, Dr. Collins was appointed as the Quality Enhancement Plan Director for the entire university. She holds a PhD in Management from Florida Atlantic University, as well as an MBA and BS from Florida State University. Prior to joining the faculty at Florida A&M, Dr. Collins taught at Florida State. She also worked for the state of Florida for 12 years in various agency capacities, including serving as a tax auditor. Very impressive person. She is an entrepreneur herself. She is the owner of J. Collins Consulting, LLC, a company that specializes in organizational development, talent management, and strategic management. She has been a presenter for this series, and we're delighted to have her today to be our moderator for the session. Just a couple more comments about NCNW. We were founded 83 years ago to be an advocate for women of African descent, their families and communities, and we continue that work today. Ingrid Jones, who is formerly with the Coca-Cola Company, calls and is chair of NCW, refers to it as Ford for the Future. Education, entrepreneurship, health, and civic engagement or public policy. In other words, why should we vote? You know, we have an important election coming up in November, and if we vote like it was 2012 and Barack Obama's still on the ballot, we won't have anything to worry about the day after the election. NCNW's National Convention comes up on November 9th through the 11th, the week after the election. After we turn out the vote and elect the candidates of our choice, we will gather in Washington, D.C. at the beautiful Grand Hyatt Hotel for our 58th annual convention or biannual convention. We want to thank all of you for joining again today, and I have a few closing comments. But Dr. Collins, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Ms. Mathis. I would like to introduce our speaker for today. Professor LaTanya White is a growth mindset business coach for dreamers, doers, and change makers. An author, entrepreneur, educator, and coach. She knows innovation. Through easy to understand concepts and tough love accountability, the Becoming Fearless Academy, a business mastermind group that challenges minority entrepreneurs to articulate, test, and pivot their assumptions about what their entrepreneurial journey will require. She developed her own foundation growing up in the Liberty City area of Miami, Florida, and began to evaluate her inner strength and resilience as a student at Florida A&M University School of Business and Industry. It wasn't until she was completing an MBA-level internship in Buffalo, New York, that Professor White began to analyze the entrepreneurial mindset she had developed, because it would take a 3,000-mile trek to Bali, Indonesia, before she had been retrained to accept her purpose as the guide that so many minority entrepreneurs needed to get over their fear and launch their business. Through her active service under the Economic Development Programmatic Thrust with Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Professor White hopes to leverage her sorority's global reach in an effort to recreate economic independence in communities of color. Through the easy to understand concepts of the Becoming Fearless Academy, Professor White challenges minorities entrepreneurs, just like yourselves. So today I present to you Professor LaTonya White, who will share with us hashtag relationship goals.
Thank you, Dr. Collins, and thank you so much to the National Council of Negro Women for inviting me and for thinking enough of me to contribute to the Millennial Entrepreneur Series. Dr. Collins, I'm sitting here blushing listening to the bio that I wrote, but it just sounds so different when we start to honor and give ourselves credit for the things that we've done and for the places where we've landed on our journey. So that's going to be a major theme this afternoon as we kind of work through these different steps in keeping clients happy, because a lot of that will really come down to how we see ourselves. Janice, you referred earlier to a lot of us on the webinar seeing ourselves as entrepreneurs. And in my studies, I'm actually pursuing a PhD in social justice leadership. In my studies, a lot of the people that I interact with don't see themselves as entrepreneurs. So we all that are here today have an additional challenge in charge to help change the narrative about how we see ourselves as Black women entrepreneurs and how we can impact social justice and economic equality in our community. So that's just a whole nother soapbox. No, I will focus on our agenda today, which is relationship goals and keeping clients happy. So I'll jump right into the presentation. I do want to let our attendees know that both Dr. Collins and I are professors and we engage. So we look forward to your questions. We're actually going to open up the platform for Q&A every 8 to 10 minutes or so. So if I'm talking too fast, make sure to raise your hand, let us know, but jot down your questions for us so that when we do get to that Q&A portion, you're ready to go with this, okay? So I am, as Professor, or as Dr. Collins shared, and Professor White, I have a background in sales professionalism. I was in pharmaceutical sales for about 4 years, left pharmaceuticals to start my own hospitality endeavor. Community leader and servant leader at heart. A global entrepreneurship educator, and not just globally geographically speaking, but interdisciplinary, across the supply chain, across industries. I like to have learned a little bit about everyone that I've served or taught so that I can pay that forward. Sparrow is my little one who actually launched me on my journey to becoming fearless, and you'll hear me thematically refer to journeys and becoming and developing, because this is all a process. We're all in different parts of the continuum. And I published my first book, which is titled Becoming Fearless, and an interactive workbook titled Pivot in 2016. So that's just a little bit about me, but you can learn a lot more once we connect, or if we connect beyond just the webinar. So you're probably wondering, if you've never heard this term, growth mindset, you're probably wondering what it is. Growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, it's different from just a positive or a negative outlook. So growth mindset is evidence-based, and from Carol Dweck, that's D-W-E-C-K, she's the leading researcher in this field. She explains the concept, and what growth mindset is the understanding that we can develop our abilities and our intelligence. And while the research is couched more in academic settings, mostly looking at elementary school, it applies in every aspect of our lives. So academically, personally, relationally, and especially entrepreneurially, which is the context that we're speaking here. So what does that mean, though? What does that mean for you? It means, from an academic standpoint, if you ever walked into a science class or chemistry and said, oh, this is not going to be good for my GPA this semester. That's you operating from a fixed mindset. That's you saying, well, I've never been good in chemistry, I've never been good at science, and there's just no hope. And it's not anything new. It's nothing that we hadn't heard from our aunts growing up. It's nothing we hadn't learned from growing up in church. And it's the idea that how we project our identity and how we project ourselves is what comes to pass. So when we think about what we want our businesses to look like, how we want our relationships with our clients to unfold, we're projecting all of that into what actually comes to pass. So with coming from the lens of growth mindset and coming from the idea that you can develop your abilities, your intelligence, and certainly your relationships, this is where this concept of neuroplasticity comes into play. So if you see this word, you should see plastic in the word, and we can think of stretching like rubber bands. We see neuro, which should indicate something that has to do with the brain. So putting those together, we get neuroplasticity, which literally means that we can stretch the brain, we can grow, and we can succeed as long as we give ourselves the opportunity to do so. Now, of course, we'll circle back to how this shows up in your business and how this shows up in your brand, but this is one concept that, God loved them, our small business development centers, our entrepreneurship programs, our small business administration offices. We aren't talking about the mindset that's required to be successful as entrepreneurs, as millennial entrepreneurs, and as African American millennial women entrepreneurs. So that's every identity that you have, that you need to walk into building your business and establishing those client relationships that are going to create generational wealth, that are going to help eradicate or at least minimize the social injustices that communities of color and that people of color face. So there are a lot of concepts that are inherent in growth mindset, but the one that I really, really resonate with is this idea that I belong somewhere. I remember when I first started my bartending business, everyone around me was like, what are you doing? And I felt so isolated that I started to reconsider if I really wanted to go this route. And every new idea that I had, every new innovation that I wanted to offer to the world, I would always feel so isolated. And that makes you really kind of step back and say, well, maybe this isn't what I need to be doing. And so that trepidation, that fear, that insecurity, that starts to show up in how you connect with your clients. That starts to show up in how you set your pricing and how you show up for client meetings. So growth mindset is such a foundational concept to keeping your clients happy, to producing revenue streams that are sustainable, and again, kind of bringing us back to those legacies that we want to create for our children's children. There are several growth mindset exercises. Dr. Collins actually introduced me to a book called The Growth Mindset Playbook. So I use the Growth Mindset Playbook and the Growth Mindset Coach to actually develop some exercises for my students. Since January, I've had maybe 250 students kind of interact with growth mindset. And we're talking about blue ocean strategy. We're talking about all kinds of things over the course of a 16-week semester. And they come and tell me, why can't we do more growth mindset? Like, can our whole semester just be growth mindset? So that speaks to the power and the impact that growth mindset can provide for you. And, the bottom line of it all is that you can do anything. It's just a matter of the perspective that you have when you are engaging with those goals academically, professionally, and entrepreneurially. So I don't want to go too fast. If there are questions, this is a great time. Is that okay, Dr. Collins, to kind of open up for questions?
Sure, that would be great. Also, if you could make sure your slides are advancing.
Okay, let's see. They're advancing on my side. So what I'll do, I'll go here. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you in play mode?
Yes. Yeah, I was about to say you may want to make sure that you put your slide deck into play mode.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So
Yeah, and we are still, well, I'm sorry, we're still seeing the slide deck not playing, by the way. You may no need to open and close your PowerPoint.
Okay, I will try that. And then in the meantime, if there are any questions either from the attendees or from Dr. Collins.
So Professor White, you talked about the growth mindset and the how we use it in academia, and you talked a little bit about how it plays into our success as entrepreneurs. So how do you see the whole notion of growth mindset playing a role in the whole relationship goals and satisfying our customers?
That's a great question, and I appreciate you asking that, Dr. Collins. I think the relationship between growth mindset and the relationship goals is really, and we have a slide, and I can see where it's just showing the opening slide. So if people can download the handout, then you should be able to follow along a little bit better. But the connection to relationship goals and growth mindset really is in the vision that the entrepreneur has for the business and for the lifestyle that the business should create. Sometimes we go into starting a business with this passion, like literally on fire for an idea that can consume us a lot of the times, without thinking about the lifestyle that we want, the lifestyle that, you know, that ideally we can create, that we have the power to create. And we let the minutia, for lack of a better term, of running the business day to day just totally consume you without staying connected to what that end goal is and what that legacy can be or should be. So that's how, that's one of the ways, and I think we got the slides working now. I'm sorry. That's one of the ways that I see the connection between using growth mindset and establishing those relationship goals, because without paying customers, there is no business. And a lot of times, even though we live in this digital world and you can take a massive online free course from Stanford University, you're not connected. And we want to build in so much leverage and so much autonomy in our businesses that we aren't building relationships with the people that are spending their hard-earned dollars with us and with our businesses.
Thank you, Professor White. So what I hear you saying is that it's important for me to believe in my business and also understand how my belief in myself impacts how I attract customers to my business.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we'll talk a little bit about even how you repel customers, and that's okay, because we can't go to every party, we can't be on every social media platform, and we can't serve every prospective client, but those clients that help us stay in touch with the vision, the promise that we're making, and that legacy that we want to live, or that legacy that we want to create, those are the clients that we need to attract to us, and that we can do that through the right mindset. And of course, having the right identity about who you are within the business.
Well, thank you so much, Professor White. We don't have any other questions at this time, so we'll move on with your presentation.
Okay, and did the slides advance on everyone's side?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you for that feedback. So this opens up with saying on one condition. So I'll just back up just a little bit to bring your attention to the very last line of this previous slide, which says that you can do anything, by adopting the growth mindset on one condition. There's one thing that you have to commit to, but within that one thing, which is becoming fearless, there are several little components. So there's a book titled The 12-Week Year by Brian P. Moran. And the author, he's actually a co-author, but they talk about how we set these annualized goals that we'll say a year from now, I'll be 40 pounds down in my weight. So that's a doable goal, but what are you going to do to get there? And what can you do this week to help you get closer to that goal that's so far away? And then Parkinson's law comes into play. Parkinson's law says, however much time we give ourselves is the amount of time it's going to take to complete the task. So in the academic setting, if we tell our students, well, you have the entire semester to complete this project. It's a 16-week semester. I should have it by week 15. You won't get it until week 15 unless we change the dialogue. So we'll say, well, I need part 1 of your semester-long project by the end of January. Part 2 by the end of February, part 3 by the end of March, and so on. So the 12-week year is a concept that compresses the annualized goal, and that's what Becoming Fearless does as well. It compresses the ultimate goal of developing the right client relationships, which let us not forget that without paying customers, we have no business. So the conditions are to commit to building the right foundation. And that starts with growth mindset. It includes a lot of other things that we'll talk about this afternoon. You must commit to conducting an honest evaluation of who you are, what your brand promise is, what your business is, and what your capacity is. So while we want to serve everyone, we don't have the time or the resources to serve everyone right now. We can build up towards that, but we have to be honest about that kind of thing with ourselves. Committing to completing a thorough analysis of who you are and what you're up against. While we might like to say that we have no competitors, our idea is so innovative and it's so brand new that we don't compete with anyone. We have direct and indirect competitors, and you have to be in a position where you can analyze who those companies are, but also how you can build relationships with them to collaborate with them. The next thing that it's almost the first thing that we should do is to develop a new perspective. And I say by retraining ourselves, and that's mostly focusing on our self-worth and our value, because that impacts how much we charge our clients, which impacts how long we can stay in business. So it's great that our goal is to develop outstanding client relationships. We want recurring client relationships. We want paying client relationships. But that still comes down to, are you positioning your pricing in a sustainable fashion that allows you to stay in business? Committing to implementing principles of leverage, because we all get the same amount of time in the day that Beyonce does. She might be worth 1 billion times more than we are collectively right now, but she gets the same 24 hours a day, the same 168 hours a week. She has more access. She has access to more resources. But what can we do right now to leverage the time that we have and to create more opportunities and more space for ourselves in adopting appropriate efficient systems? Because when you look through your day and you find yourself doing the same thing over and over and sending the same email reply over and over, there are systems that can free up that time for you. And that is important because it creates more space for you to service those client relationships. You can't service your most important client if you're trying to figure out what to say in this email or being frustrated by the next email that you've already written 2 times that day. So there are ways to navigate around those kinds of things that make us less efficient in how we operate our business. And then finally, a major commitment is to establishing a business model that is sustainable. And I stress that so much because when we find a brand that we like it, right? We want to keep going back to it. And if your customers have become loyal to you and they don't negotiate with you on your pricing and they appreciate the relationship and your professionalism, they want to be able to come back to you in 2 years. We know the statistics about the failure rates and success rates of businesses, and especially minority-owned businesses. We have a responsibility to stay in business, not just for ourselves and for our families, but for the clients and customers whose problems and frustrations that our businesses help address and solve. So while we have this one big commitment in becoming fearless so that we can be open and have those open relationships with our clients, these are things that are required for us to do in order for us to walk into those client engagement sessions, those coaching sessions with our clients that allow us to show up as the best version of ourselves, our brand, and our businesses as possible. So that is the one commitment. That's the one condition that we all have to do on a daily basis to do anything, which in this context is keeping our clients happy. So foundationally though, who are you? This is where keeping your clients happy starts and ends. It starts with you as the business owner who has a separate brand from the business. Yes, it's your baby. It's what keeps you up at night. It's what you think about the last thing you go to sleep. But who are you? And how is that showing up in what you're giving to your clients? And when we think about this, and this comes from the workbook that I referred to earlier, we do some exercises, we do some vision casting, which it can sound cliche, especially if you've done it before. You do a vision board at the beginning of every year and all those trendy things. But what we don't talk about when we do those exercises is your identity. We don't talk about who are you at your core and not who are you with the mask on, or when we're code switching, we go from work to after work to family, and we're just switching off identities. But who are you at your core? Because that identity of yours is what crafts the promise that your business makes to the world and to the person or the perfect prospect of your business that you're enlivened by and really, really energized by serving. All of that is couched in you being in touch with and us being connected to who we are at our core. Just doing a time check, Dr. Collins, are we okay? Are we wanting to open up for questions right now?
We had one question, Professor White, and the question was about the millennials, and they wanted you to just clarify, when you say millennials, are we talking about age or season in time in the 21st century? Because Monique is 49, but she believes that the growth mindset is applicable to her.
Absolutely. And Monique, thank you for clarifying. I know when we hear millennials, certainly we think about age. And then there's that debate about, well, if you were born after 1983 or 1982, you're a millennial, whatever that is. So those boundaries can certainly be blurred. And you're right, growth mindset applies to you, it applies to me. And remember that the majority of this research is in elementary schools. So no one of us is outside of the scope or the impact of growth mindset. But to your specific question about who are we referring to as millennials, I like to think of it as the season that you're in your journey. So when we talk about young entrepreneurs, that doesn't just mean young in age. That means young in business. That means young even in confidence, that can mean young in revenues, young in product lines. So don't think that we're just talking about people born after 1983 or whatever that cutoff is. We're really talking about where you in, again, the continuum in your journey on this.
Thank you, Professor White. We have another question for you.
Okay.
And Ms. Brown wants to know, what are some steps to take to better understand yourself at your core? With so many influences and voices, how do you back it out and reflect?
Right. That's a great question. It's so great, in fact, that the PhD program that I'm in at Antioch University, a part of our mission and a part of every assignment or learning achievement that we do, we're required to add reflection to that. So to your question, I'll just actually go to the next slide, just so that you can see some of the aspects of identity construction. So I'll start actually with this scripture, where your treasure is, there your heart is also. And a lot of people, when we hear this, it's usually, and of course the verses leading up into that talks about don't store your treasures up here on earth, essentially not putting your faith in material things. But when we also think about what we've been purposed to do and what we've been gifted with, that's our treasure. And a lot of times when we run from that, we're running from who we are. We're running from what's in our heart. So in identity construction, there are these 3 layers. And I'm inspired by this from the Center for Creative Leadership. They have this identity mapping exercise. So we start with our given identity. These are the things that we're born with, African American female from Miami, Florida, oldest of 2, like those kinds of things. The things that you can't change, essentially. And the second layer is our chosen identity. You chose your major, you chose your career path. To your point, we even choose what information we consume. But at our core, and this is the direct answer to your question, these are the things that no matter how much you code switch, how much you change the masks, these are the things that go with you wherever you are. So when you feel that internal conflict, when you feel that tension from being someplace where you are code switching, a part of that is you not being authentic about who you are, and you're not living in your authenticity. So this is where we have to slow down and say, take stock of, how am I feeling right now? What am I feeling, in my heart chakra, if you're along those lines, but what am I feeling? Do I feel grounded? Do I feel connected? And if I don't, then I'm not being true to my core identity. So I'll give you my identity construction, my identity map. So given identity, African American female, all those things. I chose Florida A&M, chose my major, chose my career path, but at my core, when I don't feel connected to people, when I don't feel safe enough to be relational, and when I play like I don't care that I'm not connected to you, I feel this internal tension. So I've learned and come to accept that at my core, I need to have deep, authentic connections with people. So while we're having this webinar, we're separated by time and space, I really want to be connected to everybody here. And you can probably hear that in my voice. That's very authentic to me, and it's very authentic to the brand that I'm designing, and it'll be the same for you. So when we have this connection to our core identities that informs our brand, that builds the promises that we're making to our clients, when we aren't fulfilling those promises, we aren't keeping our clients happy. And if you're operating in a space within your business or with your business idea that doesn't lift you up, you are not going to be the best version of yourself when you engage with your clients. And that is why we start with growth mindset. We go into our identity construction, and then we can start to talk about how do we build successful client relationships. It's about you being authentically you. So I know that's a long way around the question, but this is the core, truly the core of keeping clients happy and achieving those relationship goals. And really not just in business. If you think about every relationship you're in, are you being your authentic self?
Thank you, Professor White. We'll continue on, and you can just let us know when you'll pause again for some questions.
Okay, very good. So I'll backtrack just a little bit. So you should see at the very bottom of this screen, when we started talking about who you are, I ended on your perfect prospect, because people buy from people they know, like, and trust. That's referred to as the KLT factor, know, like, and trust. And on some level, the people within your organization, your social media posts, your emails that go out, you have to be connecting with the right person. And even on some plane, that connection needs to be an emotional connection. So we're talking about who you are, who your perfect prospect is, how your core identity designs your brand. And I want to interject here just in making sure that we all are comfortable with the idea that a brand isn't just a logo. A brand is your promise. A brand isn't just your color scheme. A brand is your promise. So that means at every point that someone can connect with you or engage with you, they're getting a promise that you should be delivering on. And in those times when you aren't delivering properly, that's when we have that disconnect in your client relationships. So while you heard me say that you need a personal brand that is separate from the business, your personal brand still, of course, shows up in your business brand. And that's how we connect the identities, your identities, to the business and then to your perfect prospect. So in my bio, you heard it said that I help entrepreneurs challenge their assumptions. And one major assumption is that we have the right people for our business, that the right client or the right perfect prospect is ready for us as soon as we're ready to, they're ready to buy as soon as we're ready to sell. But what you've assumed there is, like, you don't know their story. You don't know what happened that morning. You don't know what's going on at work that is totally consuming their energy and their attention, that they aren't even thinking about spending money, let alone spending money with you, answering your emails, or signing up for a coaching call. They are not thinking about those things. So what we have to do is dial back, take a step back, and really look at, one, who do we want to serve? Who do we have the best capacity to serve? And that's not just in time, that's in our talent and in our treasure. Because some of our clients are going to need a little bit more from us than we can give right now. So in identifying or developing what I refer to as a perfect prospect profile, knowing there's nothing or no one perfect, this is ideally, right? So let's think about who she is or who he is. Let's think about the person that is the client and not the client as a revenue stream. And how we design that is looking at and in doing this, we're thinking about one person. There is the Glazer Kennedy Insider Circle. They have these networking or marketing conferences, and I was struck so hugely from one of the conferences I went to. The presenter said, your website is for one person. So you design your website as though you are speaking to one person. Now, that one person might represent a group of people, but just like we've learned in our classrooms, our students are more accountable when we can call them by name and not just refer to the class as a whole. So in designing your perfect prospect, you think about that one person. If you've already done business, who's the one client that you really, really enjoyed working with? Let's rebuild her or him, and let's think about the characteristics that that person has. And so then we can start to see the patterns, the connections, and the relationships that that person represents that you want to start building for your business. So we'll give them an age, like how old are they? Because that impacts how they spend their money, as we know, their education, their income. And what I didn't list here is that you want to give them a name. You want to personify this ideal client, and they need a name. You want to be able to literally see the world from the way they see it when we're talking about your business. So we have our demographics, we have our psychographics, and this is essentially consumer behavior. They have a problem. We only spend money when we're looking for a solution. That's why the physical fitness and gyms and Weight Watchers, they make more money than the health food stores because it's easier to buy the solution than to prevent the problem. Unfortunately, you have to make sure that you're aware of what that problem is, because they will not buy anything from you unless you are saying to me, I understand you, I understand your problem, and guess what? I have a solution for you. So understand the problem that your clients face, because I can't connect with you if you don't even know where I'm coming from as a potential client. You can't build a relationship with me if you only look at me as a money machine. I'm human, and your clients want to know that you understand that about them. So what problem are they facing? What are they frustrated by? Because we know there's nothing new under the sun. So maybe they're frustrated by the fact that your competitors just don't get this part of the business right. Is that where you can come in and really build on that gap? Is there an opportunity for you there? So really dig into what your prospects are frustrated by, and then even more importantly, what they're motivated by. Like, why do they want to come in and spend $75 every 4 weeks on lashes? What's the underlying motivation there, and how can you help them address that? But the thing that's typically unspoken is the transformation. Your clients are seeking to be transformed. They're wanting to go from confused to clarity, from out of shape to very in shape. They want some transformation. If you can be a part of their journey and you walk with them and engage along that transformation, that's where your relationships flourish. That's where that happens, along the transformation, not the transaction, the transformation. So I'll go to the next slide unless there are any questions, Dr. Collins, or from any of the staff.
There aren't any questions at this time, so
Okay.
we'll continue.
So keeping clients happy, that's what we're all here for, right? No one signed up for this growth mindset, this identity mapping and identity construction, but hopefully you can see the value in really laying the foundation into that soapbox that comes with keeping clients happy. We talked about your mindset and walking into the business and starting the business, operating the business, how your identity and your connection to your core identity really kind of builds that brand promise, that brand, and then the promise that the brand makes. So in you multiplying your connection concepts, understanding of these concepts, and even more specifically, the implementation of these concepts, that's where the client transformation takes place. So like I said, people want to go from somewhere to something. And there's a great book by Donald Miller. It's called Building a Story Brand, that really helps you build the story, because your favorite movies, your favorite books, they all follow a certain formula. So if you have some notes that I'll really kind of run quickly, it's 7 parts to the storytelling formula. You have a hero, which is the client, not you. We are not the heroes in the story. So if you think about, every movie has a main character. That character is your client. You are not the star of this show as the business owner. So every hero faces a problem, which I referred to in the previous slide. That hero is looking for a guide, someone to help them navigate and solve that problem. This is where you show up. This is where your brand and your business shows up as the guide to help them solve the problem that they're facing. As the guide who has all this experience, all these resources and connections, you help them build a plan to solve that problem. And within that plan, you establish your authority. And we struggle with this. We don't give ourselves enough credit. We're so used to being humble and to being modest that we don't give ourselves enough credit to be the expert. And if you don't think you're the expert, then why on earth should I give you my money if you don't think you're the expert? So remember that within developing this plan for your clients, you have to show up as the resource, as the expert, and as the authority to help them navigate through the problem that they're facing. And I mean, literally, even if it's, I need lashes because it helps me feel better about who I am. And that's okay. So we have a hero that faces a problem, who meets a guide, which is you. The guide develops a plan, which includes how we engage and how we build relationships with each other. And that plan focuses on success. That plan calls them to action. And the action is, you must do this in order to get XYZ outcome. So it's in that space is where our relationships really kind of blossom or shrivel. And engaging with that client in the way they want to be engaged. So we aren't talking about the golden rule here, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We need to take that a step further and really consider what I like to call a platinum rule. Do unto others as others would have you do unto them. I know from being in the classroom for 8 years that I cannot engage with every student in a deeply personal way that is reflective of my core identity. I've learned that the hard way, unfortunately. I have to engage with students the way they want me to engage with them. And if that just means through email and they come to class, then that's what that is. You also have to do that with your clients. Make sure you understand, are they phone people? Do they prefer text messages? Can you just shoot them a DM on Instagram? Like, how do they want you to engage with them? And that's where we have our different social media platforms, our different integrated communication methods. Is it through social media or WhatsApp or Slack? But you have to find out these things. So in calling your hero, because remember, this story is not about you, in calling the hero to some action, we also are building the ways that we're engaging and keeping our clients happy by connecting with them the way they want to be connected to. So from our call to action, that should take them to success. We want to be able to show and demonstrate, market, and talk about what success will look like for them if they follow the plan that you've laid out. You also, unfortunately, have to sell failure. You have to sell failure. This is the status quo. If you don't do these things, which I've recommended, then this is what could possibly happen. And the very last part of that is the client transformation. They want you, your clients want you to be a part of their journey. We know the stats and the statistics about so many people on social media. Facebook has so many billion users, but we're disconnected. People want to be connected to each other. Your clients want you to be connected to them in some small way. So you have to find that out so that you can keep your clients happy and building and achieving those relationship goals, but you can assume what they are. I think that's the key. That's the main thing that you have to take away from this, is not assuming what we want our clients, what our clients want to experience from us. So from that, so I'll quickly again just run through the storytelling formula. And you use this on your website, you use it in your social media posts, you use it when you're doing client calls, when you are in your Facebook groups. Make sure your client knows they are the hero. Everybody wants to be important to somebody. And if I'm spending money with you, I might want to feel a little bit important to you. The hero faces a problem, acknowledge that problem. Make sure they understand that you connect with them on some level to that problem. You are the guide. Your brand, your promise, your business is the guide, but you have to establish your authority, meaning you have to give yourself credit for everything that you've experienced on this journey up till now. That plan should call them to action, and you have to, within that space, understand and build the relationship that your client wants to have and not the relationship you want to have with the client. From there, we need to paint pictures of both success and failure, and also make sure that we're staying engaged on the transformational part of this journey. So that's the keeping clients happy part in a nutshell. But there are so many other things that have to happen, and they have to successfully be executed in order for the hero to even trust you enough to let you in. So what do they really want? I think we have I'm supposed to check in with you, Dr. Collins, about questions, because clearly I can go on and on about this. But are there any questions?
Professor White, we have 2 questions for you. Thank you so much for sharing with us the whole storytelling concept. You have a question around the concept of transformation, and they wanted to know, how does that concept of transformation work if your product is a food item like candy?
Okay, that's a good question, and it seems superficial. And I have a sweet tooth, so we might have to talk. Whoever question that is, we might have to talk. But if you think about people that love sweets, sometimes it's from an emotional eating standpoint, and sometimes it's really just the comfort of it. And I know for me, like, I'm a chocolate person. I know that when I need chocolate, it's because it sounds crazy, but I need to be grounded. I need to get back reconnected. And chocolate helps me do that, and I'm not ashamed to say it. So what you have to think about is, again, going back to the person that's going to be consuming your product. Why do they want the chocolate? What might be happening around them? Is it a celebration? Is it someone's birthday? And that's a representation of what we're celebrating. It's a representation of how they feel. Or is it one of those days where it's just been a long day and all I need is a good piece of chocolate, and that's just going to help me reconnect? So you still have to think about the person and their experience, not just the product. So I hope that helps. Feel free to ask a follow-up question on that particular one, since we're talking about a product. But this comes down to t-shirts, it's jewelry, it's shoes, it's anything that we consume. It may not be something that we need to replace often, like I have to do with chocolate, but it still comes down to, what am I hoping to experience from consuming or interacting with this particular product?
Thank you, Professor White. So we have another question, and it's talking about digital entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And the question is, if you're a digital entrepreneur, how do you figure out the problem, the frustration, the motivation of prospective clients? Is it by sending out surveys, emails to obtain psychographic information?
That's a good question because you can come from two ways. Sometimes people are recommended to find a problem and then build a digital business or build a business around the solution. So in that case, what you might do is go into Facebook groups if you have the slightest idea of who you want to serve. So maybe it's in IT because that you have a background in IT. Where are people hanging out? Even in the digital spaces when it comes to IT and information technology. Are there LinkedIn groups that they're on? Is there a Facebook group for people? What about conferences for your industry or for the associations in your industry? And when you get to those spaces, be they digital or physical, listen to what people are talking about. If you're in a Facebook group, you can do a keyword search for frustration or frustrated or problem or help. Because when people ask for help, they're telling you that there's a problem that they're facing that they can't solve on their own. So if you don't know where you're going to start, maybe first think about what space you want to be in, what context you want to be in, or even what industry, and then find out where those people are spending their time in digital or physical spaces. And when you get there, don't lurk, don't just be a silent stalker, really engage, but also listen, because we love talking about ourselves. We want someone to relate to the frustrations and problems that we have. So you can literally do a keyword search in Facebook. I hadn't been on LinkedIn in a while, so I'm not sure if you can do a search in a LinkedIn group, but people will tell you what they're frustrated by. And once you start to see who those people are, then start to build a connection or relationship with them, send them a private message. Hey, this is my expertise and my experience. I saw that you mentioned you were frustrated about this. Can you tell me a little bit more about your experience with it, or can you help me understand what specific context you're facing this challenge in? So that's one way. Now, if like I know that I really want to help African American women and people of color who aspire to be entrepreneurs, now I got to go out and do the same thing, right? I got to go out and find the Facebook groups or the LinkedIn groups or the NCNW conferences or chapter meetings where those people are, and I need to be a resource. I need to listen, but I also need to be a resource. And that's how you start to hear those frustrations and putting yourself in the spaces that people feel safe enough to share them. So the condition or the caveat is you can't take advantage of that. Like if that's a safe space for people, you have to first add enough value for people to want to, invite you into the conversation, because it's almost like you're at a networking event and 2 or 3 people are already talking and you kind of like walk up a little bit, but you hadn't introduced yourself, or no one's kind of stepped aside to let you step into the circle, because that's a safe space. So to be seen as a player in our safe space, you have to establish your value and your resources to them within that space.
Thank you, Professor White. So just as a follow-up, you mentioned the KLT factor, know, like, and trust. So in those digital environments, how do we help our customers know, like, and trust us as they would in a traditional setting?
In a traditional setting, that's a great question. It's funny, and it comes down to your endorsements, because you can talk about yourself and talk about how good you are and how much experience you have until the cows come home, but that's not received well, right? People don't like people that brag about themselves. But if you have what's called social proof, there are testimonials, there are people retweeting, reposting, and resharing your content. There are people that without you even asking them, but sometimes you do have to ask to go out and endorse you and drive people to your Instagram profile, drive people to your website, drive people to your events, then that's where you build that social capital. So social proof and social capital are really the underpinnings of how you get people to like you and trust you. How they get to know you is through the content that you produce, the consistent content. And I'm guilty of this. We don't always have the time to be consistent, but then there are systems that help us schedule posts, right? So in thinking about what people want to hear, what your customers and clients need to know about the solutions that you offer, are you sharing that with them? Or is it just you and your girls that really kind of know that you're the best person to solve this problem? And that's when we get back to owning it and owning our brilliance, is be okay with saying, this is who I am, this is what I'm good at, and this is what I can offer. What do you know about XYZ? So sharing what you know, sharing your expertise, sharing your brilliance is how people get to know you. And from there, they get to like you. And those third-party endorsements, those testimonials, all of those other digital social capital things are what helps them trust you.
Thanks, Dr. White. We'll continue on with your wonderful insight that you're providing us on these relationship goals.
Thank you, and thank you. I love the questions. So now we're talking about what our clients actually really want, right? We built our foundation. We're feeling closer and more connected to our identity. We know the storytelling formula. We're focusing on that transformation. But within that transformation, how do they want you to show up? How do they want you to interact and to engage with them? And what do they really want? In relationships outside of business, in our relationships with our parents and our relationships with our partners, we aren't always 100% vocal or transparent about what we really want. Your clients, on the other hand, will be very transparent about what they want. But that doesn't mean you don't have, as the business owner, as the brand architect, that you don't have a responsibility to still listen to what they are not asking you. Listen to what they are not saying. And a lot of that comes down to the experience. We live, again, in this such digital network society, and this is my bias, because remember, my core identity is about connection and experience. So I think that people want experiences from you, even if it is a digital product. What is my experience when I come to your website? What is the user interface look like? Is it colors that are attractive to me as a prospect? And those colors will change depending on if I'm male or female. What is my experience when I sign up for your product? Does it come directly to my email, or does it open up a new tab and I have to make sure to go to that new tab and download it? So what I really want is a seamless, easy to navigate, enriching experience from you if it's a digital product. Now, if it's candy, what kind of experience do I want? Do I want it to be fun and bubbly, which means on your website, when I come to order my product, there should be like interactive balloons or something? You know how you can send the confetti on the iMessage? Is it something like that that pops up? When I see your product in the store, what experience do you make sure that I get even though you're not there? Are you on an end cap display? Do you have people coming into the store sampling the product? And then after I've spent my money, what is the experience? Or is it just crickets? Do you have what you need from me as the client and that's it? Or are you following up with me, engaging with me on my preferred social media platform, sending me happy birthday messages or getting feedback? What is the experience? And it doesn't just happen. That experience happens both before I make my payment and after I make my payment. So you think about, here again, this word continuum. What's been my experience along the client continuum with your brand and with your business? That's what I really want. That's how you really make me happy. That's how I keep coming back, is that you understand what I want and still be able to deliver it in a way that doesn't take up all of your time, because you have leverage in these efficient systems built into how you operationalize. Rapid response, right? Everyone wants the answer right now. How can you do that? You have to anticipate what some questions are going to be. When I was in pharmaceutical sales, we would do role playing where we essentially pretended that we were in a doctor's office or that we were chatting with a nurse about our product. And if you didn't anticipate the objection, and that's what it's referred to, if you didn't anticipate the objection, you'll get thrown off your rocker. You just wouldn't know how to bounce back from it. So play devil's advocate in your business and answer my objections before I even ask them. So that means on your website, you might have a frequently asked questions. When you post on social media, you might address some of those objections and overcome them. So the rapid response can come in when you are anticipating what your clients are going to say, when you've taken into account what your past clients have said, and as you're in real time incorporating what your current clients are telling you. And that's how you build in that rapid response. I don't want to feel like I'm just one in a line of 1,000. I am your only customer right now, even though I know there are 100 other comments on this post. I want to know that you see me. So that's where having a team, if it's student interns or other people as your business is growing, who's all on the same page, can address those questions in real time as they come in. Because we do live in this microwave society, but I still want you to be very, very real with me. And upfront pricing. Right? So this is where we struggle, especially as minority entrepreneurs. There's report after report that shows the revenues for Black-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses are 100 times less than the revenues that white-owned businesses bring in. And why is that? Not that your pricing is shady, but your pricing does not account for your expertise. Your pricing, and that's a part of not being upfront. That's the part of not taking a stance on what you bring to the table as a business owner and as a brand. And then you see, okay, well, this isn't sustainable. I'm going to have to raise my prices because I'm just working too hard. Now you have to convince these clients that you work so hard for to pay more money for the same product. When if you had just been upfront with yourself about what you bring to the table, you would have seen from the beginning that these prices were too low. So now you come 3 months later, 6 months later, and you want me to pay more? Yeah, I'll probably just go to your competitor, because even if they are already charging more, and I've personally done that, I would go to a competitor who charges more because clearly they're more confident about what they're doing. They could be offering the same services, the same products, the same features, but there's also this idea we get what we pay for. So what your clients really want and how you keep your clients happy is consistency. Consistency across the experience, consistency across their engagement, and certainly consistency across how and what they are paying for with you and with your brand or your business. So I actually think that is the last couple of, we still have a couple more slides. I definitely want to check in with Dr. Collins. I know we appreciate everyone for being here. I know you're on lunch and all of that stuff, so just want to check in with Dr. Collins before I move on.
I do have one person with their hand raised.
Okay.
If we can try to recognize Marion Lark, who has a question. Marion, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to know the title of the book by Donald Miller.
Mm-hmm. The title is Building a Story Brand.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Are we good to go, Dr. Collins, otherwise?
Yes, there are not any questions at this time.
Okay, perfect. So just in considering the time that we have left, I'll just kind of quickly run through some of the other aspects of keeping your clients happy. So I referred to the building the right foundation and honest evaluation and all of those things. So I'll quickly introduce you all to these other parts of that framework. And the evaluation aspect, it comes into play with what are people saying. So word on the street about you is what? You need to be in tune to what that is so that you can get in front of a crisis, so that you can prevent a crisis if need be, and making sure that your current clients are happy with you and with what you're doing, and that you're building the space and the opportunity for prospective clients to connect with you so that what you're saying resonates with them. So you want to know what the word on the street is about you and about your competitors. But in making sure that you're talking about what people want to hear, because I need to make sure as your client that you know what's important to me. And this concept of editorial calendaring comes into play. So we have any media or communication specialists on the webinar, this is certainly familiar to them. But in a nutshell, as a non-journalism professional, an editorial calendar basically gives you a calendar of what you're going to be posting about, what you're going to be talking about in social media, in your email marketing, those kinds of things. So if it's the Chinese New Year, maybe I don't really want to hear about your upcoming Valentine's Day sale, right? Like, stay with me as your client and where I am in celebrating the Chinese New Year. So for the webinar participant that has the candy business, and this is for everyone actually, there's a website, you'll have to Google it, it's called National Calendar Days, so that you can see, you know, maybe it's National Chocolate Day or National Hard Candy Day, and there is such a thing. But find those things on the calendar that are important to your prospect and important to your customers, and talk about those things. Build your sales and your coupons and your giveaways around those days that are important to your prospects. So make sure that you're in tune to and evaluating the word on the street. In your analysis, you've got to be real. You have got to be real about this. So we talked about the know, like, and trust factor. And there's a good way to be guilty by association, because the people, the brands, and the organizations that your future clients already trust are the people, brands, and organizations that you need to have an association with. Because how many times on Instagram, and this is just my preferred social media platform, have you seen something show up on your timeline, and within the caption, they're endorsing another profile, and you click on that profile, you check out what they're talking about, and you're like, oh, I could follow them. I would like to see their stuff on my timeline, and there you have it. So that is a demonstration of guilty by association in a good way. And then to your question earlier, Dr. Collins, about building that. Say it again, William.
I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry. Earlier to your question, Dr. Collins, about building that trust on a digital platform, that's exactly how it happens. It comes from mentioning them in your captions. So in this analysis, you're looking at what people are saying about your competitors, but also how can you add value to them such that you become a collaborator and then a partner, and then they start referring people to you. But all of that happens in the analysis. In the retraining, it really comes down to making sure that you know you're worth it. You know that you are worth not having to deal with clients that don't energize you. You know that you are worth firing a client who you have not cultivated the right kind of relationship with. You know you have to know that you're worth it. So we talked a little bit about what we all have in common with Beyonce, and that's that 168 hours per week. But you have to make sure that you're using that time wisely. So in the next bullet point, I have 33% productivity. And this comes from an article that Forbes did a couple of years ago that interviewed Fortune 500 CEOs and asked them how much revenue generating productivity they have in a day. And it was less than 2 hours per day. These are Fortune 500 CEOs who have access to resources and contacts and connections that we don't have. So this is being generous by saying a third of our day is productive in generating revenue. A lot of times we're on social media, it might be building awareness, but those likes and those comments do not keep our lights on. So in making sure that we're thinking about productivity from a revenue generating standpoint, this is where another aspect of retraining comes in, because that frees you up to spend time with those clients that need just a little bit more from you. They need you to engage just a little bit more. They need you to hold their hand just a little bit longer. But if you're just on social media tweeting to tweet, without having a call to action and driving people to your website, you won't have the capacity to engage and sustain that type of relationship. And make sure you pay yourself first. So this is really no different from tithing, right? You pay yourself first so that you can build profitability into your business. And I know that sounds a little bit backwards, and I'm happy to go into that more if we have time. I'm checking the clock because I know we are up against our time. So last thing that I want to say is that it's a process. So becoming fearless is a process. Making sure that there's leverage, you're building in leverage, that you have access to the right systems. This might be MailChimp, it might be Ontraport, it depends on where you are, again, in the continuum, and that sustainability is what you're working towards, meaning in 2 years, those clients will have a business to come back to and can refer other people to. And so it's a business development process as well as a personal development process. And I wanted to share that a lot of the content that I've been sharing from this in this webinar is literally from the workbook that I published. So I love to offer one free module, either foundation, evaluation, analysis, retraining, all those others to anyone that's on the call. You can just shoot me an email and just request it by topic. So I had to wrap that up a little bit quickly because I'm looking at my time, but love to turn it back over to Dr. Collins for questions or Dr. Mathis for closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Professor White. This session has been very helpful, and I just wanted to, one point that resonated with me was that your brand is your promise. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily, the outputs, but it is your promise that you make to your clients and how important that is in keeping your clients happy. So thank you so much for sharing, and I'll turn it back over to Janice for closing remarks.
Thank you.
Janice, unmute yourself, please.
Ms. Mathis, you may be muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Clara. I need you to keep me straight. Thank you so much, Professor White, and thank you, Dr. Collins. This was just amazing.
Thank you.
NCNW is so proud to be able to bring this quality of information to our members and to our friends and supporters. It made me think about a couple things. One was somewhere in the Bible it says God has not given us the spirit of fear, but love, power, and sound mind. We got some love, some power, and some sound mind instructions today. So thank you both very much. The other thing I wanted to say is on November the 9th, NCNW will host a pitch competition in Washington, D.C. at our national convention. We will have about $10,000 in prize money. We'll have 5 finalists who will do a live pitch. If you have attended at least 4 of these webinars, and you still got time to make it up, because there'll be webinars in September and October, I encourage you to apply. We've got your email address if you've ever registered for one of these webinars, and so we'll be in touch, and you'll hear more about that very, very soon. We're serious about this growing Black women's businesses. There's no reason why we can't have the desires of our heart. I guess I want to thank you all again for being part of it. Stay tuned. Next session will be the 4th Thursday in August. We'll have a voter education webinar on August the 8th because all roads lead to the November election. Have a blessed weekend, wonderful day. Thank you all very much. And look, visit us at ncnw.org. You could do a lot worse than join NCNW.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mathis, and thank you, Dr. Collins. Thank you all for having me.
Professor White, I thought you was cool. You look so young. But see, that just goes to show you can be young and smart. You don't have to get old to be smart. We thank you so much. And Clara, Axel, and William, I don't know what we would do without you. This webinar that we're having on August the 8th on voter education will feature Ingrid Saunders-Jones, our national chair, so you don't want to miss that. She's going to talk about her own experiences with being denied the right to vote. And we're going to talk about some solutions. I think that just about does it for us today. Have a good weekend, and see you all next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.